we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The first item we're just going to take quickly out of order is that we have Mr. Barlow here. He wasn't able to make the other meetings. You can just come up to the desk, Mr. Barlow. Just what we've just gotten in the habit of now is before we make any of the appointments to any commissions or boards, we just wanted everyone to come in and introduce themselves to the board, because a lot of times we bump into people and then we don't have no idea who they are.
Oh, yeah. My name is Craig Barlow. I'm a resident of Kingston.
You want to pull that mic in front of you, please? There, perfect.
I'm a resident of Kingston. Been a resident for 40 years. I was actually on the rec committee years ago, probably 25 years ago, for a few years. At the time that we actually built the softball field by the fairgrounds, we were involved with that. Been on the school board for a term, and now that I'm retired, I want to spend a little more time helping out. So the rec commission, I like what they do. Paul's a wonderful guy, and he's easy to work with. And I've been there since September, volunteering, helping out, and decided I'd like to become an actual member.
Craig also survived a term in the school board as well.
That was quite a school board. We built both elementary schools. Actually, I was on both elementary schools that year. That was a tough year.
Yeah, it was.
A tough 3 years.
So I don't have any questions for him. I know him fairly well. I've known him for a number of years. Great guy. I'm sure he'll be a great asset for the community, and thank you for stepping up and volunteering.
Agreed.
Anyone else have questions?
I don't think so. My ignorance, how many seats do we have on the Recreation Commission?
I don't think there's a limit. I don't think there's a limit as to how many. Because the more volunteers we have, the easier it is to run the program.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that there's really no limit on how many.
I think they'll take as many as they
competent people as they get.
I mean, most of our committees and boards have an established number, and I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't think it does, as far as I know. But, I know that we always want to look for more volunteers because it makes the programs go that much easier.
So, Susan, is this appointment for a specific number of years?
For 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. And you already signed it.
Yeah, we were just waiting for it.
Oh, we already did the
Yeah, it's all
motion.
set.
Yeah.
You did last week, yeah.
Do you want to take it downstairs?
Sure. This one,
So thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Okay, getting back to the scheduled agenda under appointments. Our first one is Nick Golan, PETF Moran, Inc. This is part of the proposed Unitil solar project. There you go.
So I'm Jake Dustling with Unitil. Nick's running a couple minutes late.
Okay.
So he should be here any minute. I don't know if you want to go out of order or you want to get started.
You're just waiting on your counterpart, or
Yes, I am.
okay? Did you want to start without him, or did you want to wait?
He has all the plans. and
Okay, so
everything
he has
with
all
him,
the information.
Yes, he does.
Okay, then we can move down.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. So now we have first public comment. Public comment number 1. Would anyone like to jump in there? Seeing none, we'll move on. Committee liaison reports.
Oh, someone's coming up. That's perfect.
Oh,
This could be.
I think that's him. All right, come back up.
Phil's here too.
Apologies for the momentary delay. So I believe you guys all have in your package what was submitted.
We do have a set here if anyone wants to take a look at it.
Folks in the audience can see them. All right, good evening. My name is Nick Golan, licensed engineer and principal of the firm TF Moran. Jake Dustling, principal engineer with Unitil, may have already introduced himself.
I did, yeah.
All right, very good. So we had the opportunity to come before this board very much. Tell you a little bit about this exciting.
Just make sure you talk right into that, just so the people at home, we just want to make sure they pick that up.
To tell you a little bit about this exciting utility solar project that Unitil is undertaking. The maturation of that conversation, we talked about a few things. There's some screening, we talked about access, just the project in general, what some of its benefits would be. Had the opportunity to then meet conceptually with the planning board, where a lot of the same conversation took place. Primarily, and it was one of my biggest takeaways, really had to do with access. So without access, we don't have a project. So we thought it prudent to make sure that we had the opportunity to discuss that with you folks. What we've prepared is a plan and profile of the driveway that would come off of Toll Road. We had the opportunity to meet with your, and in the back, the DPW director out on site, so we could look at what level of improvements would be appropriate, and also took a look at some additional off-site improvements that we thought might be prudent. So in the cover letter that we had addressed to the planning board, which we thought would also make sense for you folks relative to the items to discuss, there were really three primary takeaways. Potential intersection improvements at Toll and Mill Road, and to that effect you should have an 11 by 17 in your package that shows what we could do out there. Right now we'll say the geometry is a little awkward at best. Sight lines are not ideal. Through working with Phil, we got a good idea of what we could do to improve that, and essentially a split of where that scope line would be, where Unitil would look to make those improvements, and then relative to how that curb cut would be closed would ultimately be Kingston DPW that would take care of that element. I think it really provides a mutual benefit both for the project and the town. So for what we're anticipating that cost being, Unitil is committed to making that improvement. Okay. Relative to the condition of Toll Road. So walk down it, you know, for cost, it's not in bad shape. There's a few spots where we saw some rattling that would need to be repaired in advance of the project starting. But otherwise what we would do is just similar to other projects, we'd do a video survey of it, document what those conditions were. Then after the project's complete, if there was some significant deterioration that was a result of the vehicles that Unitil was using for access and construction of the project, we'd be responsible for putting it back to its pre-existing condition. The third part, and this one's the big one for us because it's the go, no-go for the project. That's the access from Toll Road itself. So the expectation is that we would build a 20-foot wide gravel road. We'd set up PA requirements for police and fire access from the end of where it is a class 5 road. That get reviewed by your town engineer as part of the site plan approval process, but that would be the dedicated access for this facility. So being that that portion of the road is class 6, state RSA, state government, that this board would be the one to dictate that yes, that is appropriate for access. So we provided a conceptual design for the intersection, which we'll work out with Phil. And then we have the design of the actual roadway, which we believe is in keeping with what DPW's expectations are, and will be ultimately reviewed by the town engineer in concert with the site plan approval process. So our hope tonight is to, one, give you an update, let you know where we're at. We'll be meeting with the planning board next week. Yeah, next week. And just make sure that this is consistent with your expectations. That's it. Keep it short and sweet.
Questions from the board?
So, Nick, I did not have a chance to see this ahead of time, so I'm just seeing it now. It looks as though the first part of it will be to, as you said, improve the intersection of Toll Road and Mill Road, where it's coming in at right angles instead of
whatever angle that is.
Whatever that angle that is. So the part that now comes in at an angle, is that going to be abandoned, or is that still going to be?
So my understanding, we're talking with Phil, he can expand on this, we're just going to close that curb cut. There'd still be the class 5 portion of the road that goes to that last house, but just that turnoff, so you could actually gain access to the road, would be eliminated there and pushed 170 feet further to the south, which is going to open up some of those site plans.
So there's a house down near where it comes in now at an angle, and so they would then come into the new intersection.
That is correct.
And up to Toll Road and then down to their property.
Sir.
It looks like all of Toll Road is class 5.
It's class 5 pretty much up until, well, the portion that's paved is all class 5, and that's where it stops. And then it goes to a class 6 road really right before it enters into the Eversource easement.
Okay, so the plan is to come off of Mill Road at this new intersection onto toll road. And some distance of toll road is paved in class 5.
Yep.
Which you would, or which it looks like the town is gonna improve it, and then you're gonna monitor it to see what damage might occur.
So that we have a clean slate to start with, knowing that there were 2 locations that it was in bad condition. The idea is the town would repair those, so that way we know what we're working with from a starting process. Correct.
I'm gonna wanna hear from Phil to know if that was in his budget and how he's gonna handle that.
Yeah, you project
Evening.
Yeah, there's 2 things that need to be repaired by us now. So I know this project is going to go through the process, and it's something we're planning on taking care of this summer anyway. It was on my list, so this just puts it to the front.
Okay.
As far as the decommissioning of the intersection, that will be done by our forces. We're only gonna be taking out about 10 feet from Mill Road, because otherwise it would hinder the driveway that's existing there. But we'll just put a detour sign. We own the property further down, and this will be much better for any of the traffic that's going onto Toll Road. And for the duration of this project, when there's 10 to 30 people coming into there on a daily basis, people go way too fast on that road, and there's just not the sight distance. So this is an upgrade for the town. If they're putting houses in there, I'd get a whole new road for us, but this is a one-time shot, so I'll take it easy on them.
Good discussion.
So one more question. Yeah. And that relates to the improvement to the class 6 section. If somebody could describe in words what that's going to be and how it's going to be done.
So, so right now, it's just a washed out class 6 road that is not really passable. So what they're going to do is take it up to DOT spec.
Yeah, basically a driveway standard. So you're gonna have a minimum of 12-inch of selects, crushed gravel, 20 feet wide. So it'll be able to handle all the loads that we would have as far as our vehicles, and then also anything that would be required for the fire department.
And swales and such for managing stormwater, and I assume?
So the road is really super elevated existing now, so it's it's high on one side and then pitches. So what we've done is we've shown a swale on the site side, so that way we can capture and direct that stormwater. And then on the other side of the road, it will sheet off as it currently does.
And again, this would be a vast improvement over what is currently there.
Okay, all right. And has it been run? I keep asking questions, I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay. You're asking good questions.
Is the, has this been run by the fire chief?
So he got the comment plans like we all had, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be amenable to him.
I do recall, I thought we mentioned it during the inspector's meeting that there was a concern, as long as it met like the NFPA for that width as far as getting apparatus.
Correct, and that was my, we
And
had
there
that
would just
meeting
need to be
before.
like some type of wider area during the entrance of your facility where they could turn a vehicle around.
And we've designed the turning movements in and out of the facility, so a WB50 at a minimum can make those turns. And that well accommodates the fire truck as well.
Because, I mean, I would envision that, I mean, aside from what access you might need for the initial construction and then maintenance, once you've established the site, would be emergency access for, you know, for fire, because once you're in there and the thing's all set, it's probably not going to get a lot of use, but we want to make sure that if there's an emergency response, that it's...
Yep, we've designed accordingly, and that is one of the nice things about this use. Once it's up and constructed, you've got somebody going out maybe once a month to check on the bells and whistles and make sure everything's operating appropriately.
And the proposed road design is all in the plans that have been submitted?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll say, when this first came before us, I had more of an inkling for them to bring it to a class 5 standard until I realized where the delineation was between the roads. And even bringing it up to a current actual class 6 standard is going to be a vast improvement on that. And, you know, even though it may service future parcels in I don't think it falls on them to bring it to that standard if somebody wants to do an enhanced use on it, to have it upgraded to another level.
For some reason, someone wants to upgrade it to a class 5 road, we give them a good foundation to start from.
Just one, any wetlands in there? Any wetlands?
No, so our wetland scientists walk that area as well in addition to the site. We do have wetland impacts on the parcel proper, but not within the right of way.
And that'll all get addressed during site plan review.
So assuming you get the go-ahead from us tonight, your plan is to be proposing this for site plan review at planning board?
So we have an application that's going before you on June 20th, which is the same package of information, just to confirm that yes, this is appropriate for this site. That way we know we've got a project and we've got the opportunity to release the rest of the information.
So Phil, for the board to vote on, do we vote on, how does the procedure go for voting on this as far as establishing this use to the upgrading, the current conditions?
I can offer a suggestion.
I believe that we need to approve the use based on
Whatever's in front of us.
whatever improvements are proposed, assuming that that's acceptable to us.
So, one thing I've seen in the past is that a board of selectmen or the governing authority would vote to approve the access as proposed, subject to the site plan review process.
Right, yeah, okay. Any more questions before we dive further?
Phil, anything further that we should know?
Nope. I'm satisfied.
I take a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the access for this project as proposed in the designs with,
Pending site plan.
well, I was gonna say with, including the input from and the guidance by the DPW director,
Okay.
and conditional upon site plan approval from the planning board.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, appreciate your time. Thank you.
So we're moving into committee liaison reports. Ellie, do you want to start off?
Sure. Last Thursday, I attended the community forum, second in the series at the library on the aging in Kingston area. And the two areas of concern was communication and transportation. And the group will be working to further develop some talking points and maybe solutions accordingly to address some of those concerns. Yesterday's or Friday's Union Leader, there was an article about voting machines getting funded through some of the federal grants available at the state level. And so I will be talking with Mrs. Bakey about what we need to do as a town to make sure that ours get updated as well. And I spoke with Melissa Mannon, who is the director of the library, and she and I will have a monthly meetings established so that we can exchange information on a regular basis that we can convey here. They're working on a project to have an outdoor pavilion to expand their services and offerings. She and her staff have done a tremendous job in opening up the resources of the library to the community. Very impressive organization and programming that's being offered today versus 10 years ago. She's done a terrific job. I think that's it for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Glenn?
Oh.
Let's see. Do you have something?
I was gonna say, I went to this historic museum. Are you gonna address that, Glenn?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, you can, that's all right.
Well,
Because you're in the committee.
well, the Heritage Commission and the Historical Museum Committee are two of my liaison groups. And they were involved, both groups were involved in the presentation at the celebration of the Nichols Building on Saturday. And you were busy with other stuff.
Yeah, I was shuffling kids around.
Right, but actually, the other four select board members were there.
Oh, great.
We had a speaking spot on the agenda, so we got to participate that way. But it was a good celebration. I mean, it was standing room only. They
Nice
filled
turnout.
the room, nice turnout. nice presentation. The stained glass windows have all been reinstalled after the restoration work. The recognition was done. They gave plaques out to all the folks who donated and sponsored an individual window, and they also recognized other donors who contributed to the overall project. And enough additional donations were received to cover, I believe, if not all, most of the seed money that the select board had put into the project last year. So very successful, very good program. There was also an unveiling of the National Register plaque on the front of the building, and Phil donated a beautiful stone for the front. He was glad to get rid of it, but nonetheless, a beautiful stone, and mounted the bronze plaque on it, and so there was an unveiling of that. That was sort of the last piece of the puzzle. So it was.
It was extremely well done. The level of volunteerism and efforts that the two committees had done was tremendous, and that was very visible. They've done a fabulous job there in raising awareness and promoting the building and restoring it to its former glory, to put it mildly. They've done a nice job.
So that's the big news thing on those two committees. I'm also your rep to the Historic District Commission. They have a meeting tomorrow night, and they're going to be discussing, among other things, preparation for a joint meeting with the planning board to discuss possible modifications to the zoning ordinance with regard to the historic district. So they're going to talk about that before meeting with the planning board, and also going to discuss some of the guidance that the town has received from council on the responsibilities and who does what with regard to the historic district. You know, who's responsible for doing what things with regard to permitting and so forth.
Yeah, there's some inconsistencies in our regulations and kind of conflicting one with the other, and they want to get that straightened out. Now that our attorney has clarified a lot of the issues, it'll make it simpler going forward. Or clearer, I should say, clearer going forward.
And I think that's it.
I don't have much this week. Everything's going well at the police department. I spoke with the chief a few times. A liaison for that. Lori actually stepped in for me because I was at a chorus concert for my daughter last week, so she stepped in for the planning board. So I'll let her discuss that. So that's all I have. Chuck?
Yeah, not much. The fire department's just still working on getting their new fellow. He's got all the information out. Nothing with the budget committee. I haven't got anything from highway. Went to the conservation meeting Thursday night, and they were showing pictures of and discussing all of the work that they've done, or a particular group has done on the trails. And they, from what I can see and what I saw there, they do a tremendous job in keeping up, because we have a lot of trails in town, and they've built some new bridges over some of the water and that. So I think that for us, for the people in town that use the trails, unfortunately I can't use them anymore. They are well maintained, and there's a lot of them, and they do an excellent job of doing that.
We were actually just talking at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Russman. What percentage of the town do we have in conservation now?
Right now, maybe, I think it's like 21%, 25, so it's about maybe another 400 acres.
Okay.
How many acres do we have, Rick?
How
many acres do we have
what is that,
already?
20?
Well, the town's got a little over 12,000 acres, so, you know, it would be close to 3,000 acres. Now, some of that is like, we count it as a state park, which is, so I mean, it is, I mean, some is owned by the town, some is owned by Sully. So it depends, like some of the town forests, so it's, but overall, we just kind of lump it into one thing because some are protected in different ways. Some of the nature conservancy owns, like the Warren Whitcomb piece that will be coming before you guys before too long. And, but like the area called Marshall Road, that's Sully property, so.
Okay.
But, yeah, we're really getting close, so it's, you know.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know. I mean, I've had a couple people ask, how much do we already have and how much more we need to buy? And...
Right, we have about 2,100 and it's probably another, give or take, about 400.
Without Sully.
To finish it up. And the Whitcomb piece, I think is like 80 acres right there, so that puts us another big step towards it, so it's coming along.
But that doesn't count what's under conservation easement through SEL, right?
Well, no, but it counts for conservation land in town.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
thank you.
We tried to be pretty broad in the interpretation of that, so it's not get too anal about what's protected, what isn't. It's, generally it is, and so it should work.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right.
Okay, so planning board, we talked about, you mentioned the lady's name for stormwater, so they're rewriting our stormwater.
Dana Trustlaw?
Yeah, no. I can't remember her name, I'm sorry. Proposed changes to our stormwater management standards.
Maddie Diano
Maddie, there you
from the
go.
Planning Commission.
Right. So we talked about two that impacted the planning board, which was construction and then post-construction, and how that interacts with the planning board and the requirements for that. So we just had a lot of discussion, and then, you know, there's other parts of it. So really what she was doing was just kind of blowing out those sections and then deleting other things that weren't applicable. So I imagine the rest, I think she alluded to, was under the select board's purview of our stormwater management plan. So we might be seeing that other part of it. And then, so it was a really short meeting, so thank you, Chris.
Had you go to the wrong one?
Yeah, that's great. There is a walkthrough on the morning of the 17th for Toll Road at 8 o'clock. If you want to walk the site. And then for Kingston Days, we're moving along. We kind of regrouped a little bit. We're gonna do a 5K, so we're planning that. And I'm just moving forward with sponsorships and trying to finalize all of that. We have a solid waste and recycling committee on Wednesday, and then also a policy meeting Wednesday morning.
So, Chris, just to go back to Lori's comment, the reason that the Planning Commission is involved in working with the Planning Board is that the Planning Commission received a grant to help some towns make sure that their stormwater regulations are up to snuff, particularly with regard to MS4 related activities. And so Kingston was one of the towns that was selected for them to work with. So it's service from them for that particular task is at no cost to us. But we get them to provide us with some suggestions and ideas.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, nothing else. We'll move on to our first thing of old business. We have 13 Wadley Point, the demolition agreement. I know we have some folks here for that.
How you doing?
Good, how are you today?
Doing all right. So we did hear today that you guys had moved that number, that it was 40 grand, now you brought it down to 25,000?
Yeah, we got the verbal. Did we receive it in writing yet? I know we got the verbal, but they've indicated that, yeah, we've been able to reduce that amount from 40,000 to 25.
Okay. We are going to do a little investigating on our own, just to see if we can bring that down. The question I have is, we actually got our application approved from the DES, Environmental Services, and in that application, I made a copy so I can give it to you guys, and you guys can give it to the council and stuff. It says that we have to destroy that, otherwise we're fine, and we have to actually not only destroy it, but bring it back down to grade and C.
Okay.
So already the state's requiring above and beyond realistically what this contract said. So I'm just wondering if, where the state is now kind of involved with it, if we can just get rid of the bond and move on without even having to worry about that. The main reason I'm worried is not necessarily because I'm scared about doing it, because I'm fully planning on coming into compliance with this. It's more of a, I don't want to be $25,000 short on the bill, you know what I mean? Because I have it sitting around. Because also the other thing that I noticed in this agreement is it doesn't say when we get it back. there's no stipulation in here what we have to do in order to get it back? So is it just leave it down to rubble? Is it completely removed? And you know what I mean? So that was a little concerning for me, just because I want everyone, if we are gonna do a bond, I want everyone to know once X, Y, and Z is met, then the money comes back. And whereas this says nothing about it, so I just didn't want, well, now it has to be this and this and this. And
Yeah, you want the goalpost moved.
yeah, I don't want it moved.
I would say I don't have any issue with us referring that DES agreement to council, but I think because we've already engaged council to guide us on this, I think that's where we would have to go with it to make sure, to see if they feel that an agreement is still proper in addition to whatever the state has done, because we're kind of separate, we're separate entities.
Sure.
Follow
Yeah,
our own stuff.
every requirement is meeting more, and
Yeah.
what is needed.
Yeah, so I just figured it's not even on your step at that point. You don't have any kind of financial responsibility to worry about it, because at that point the state's just gonna come after us. You don't have to do anything, you just sit back and let it go.
Well, there's a question of how actively the state will follow up.
That is true.
They're, God bless them, they're short-staffed, they have a lot of work to do for very few people.
Sure.
And, the agreement is fine, but I think that the town and the local entity here has a responsibility to make sure that this happens, and probably will be more responsive than perhaps the state would be.
Sure, and I can understand that. The other question I have is, I'm a little confused, because as I'm reading through it and everything, it wants the money so you guys aren't out of pocket if you have to tear it down. But it also says that any kind of legal fee that you guys, like if you guys were to sue us or whatever to make us become in compliance, we're responsible for it all. So is it a little redundant? Like, I'm giving you 25 grand to tear down the house, but then if you sue me anyway, I'm gonna be paying.
Well, that's just the cost of the estimate we begin to physically tear it down. If you refuse to do it and we have to retain legal counsel to go after you, that's additional expenses to the town.
Well, what would the $25,000 be for then?
That's physically removing it. That's us hiring a company to go out there and remove it. That has nothing to do with the legal portion of it.
I mean, it's fair. I'm just a little confused as to what legal fees would you guys incur if you have the 25 grand to tear down the house. I mean, this thing says pretty much that you guys can come on and rip the house down at 31 days after the occupancy permit, which it's not going to get to that point.
If there's one thing I've learned in this world, the lawyers get paid, and every time we make a phone call, they're billing us.
Fair enough. So, okay, I'll leave you guys a copy of this.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. If you give that to Susan, I'd be more than happy for it, as long as the board's fine with it, forwarding it to legal to review that as part of it as well.
The only other question I have is, talking to our lawyer and everything, this site is going to be, Martha and Daryl are going to be there, and so are we. The lawyer just wanted to know what we would have to do in order to qualify for an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. Like, is there any, like, do you guys have a list of specific?
We do. We have an entire ADU ordinance.
Okay.
And that, generally speaking, if it's adding on to a building, which if you're constructing a completely new building and then you're adding an ADU onto it, there would probably be another case where it goes for review before the planning board. Or
okay.
If it's a detached ADU, say it's an ADU that's being placed in a barn or a garage.
Sure.
That goes through the planning board process as well.
So it's all
So there is a checklist in there, and
okay.
And then it becomes, if you get an ADU approved, there are additional impact fees because it's essentially become a multifamily dwelling.
Sure.
So it's considered a two-family dwelling, so there are additional impact fees that come along with that. But if you can refer right to the ordinance, or if you came down to the office during business hours, I'm sure they could provide you with a copy of any of that information.
Perfect.
If you needed it. But there is a specific accessory dwelling unit ordinance.
Okay.
And if it's a detached or attached to the primary structure, it's a conditional use permit is what's required.
Okay.
And that's issued by the planning board.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, I guess I'll leave you a copy of the DES. And if you could talk to council and see if they're fine waiving it. Like I said, I'm more than willing to sign anything saying that, yeah, by X day after, and I'm fine agreeing to, like, every day after 30 days is X amount of dollars, fine, whatever. It's just the big chunk of change kind of just sitting there, not accruing any interest, not doing anything. It's a little unnerving for me. So if we could do that, and worst case scenario, if they say no, it has to be, even if it's 10 grand, that would probably be the highest that I really want to go.
And there are other bonding options. For us, it just has to be a bond. I think there are some financial institutions that will issue you the full amount of the bond by you placing a percentage on it.
Okay.
So there are those options as well.
Okay.
I don't specifically recommend anyone, but there are options out there.
Okay. All right. And then, like I said, if for some reason that sticks and it needs a money, I do need some sort of clause in here saying X, Y, and Z needs to be met. So there's a goalpost, so we all are on the same page and there's no legal fighting.
Yeah, no, understandable.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for coming back in.
Thank you as well.
All right, so move on to new business. So we have a request for trash pickup at a vacant land with a temporary camper permit. Looks like Steve Riley of 74 Danville Road.
Yes, sir. Since Kingston changed their trash pickup this past year, and you're required to have an approved barrel now to put the trash in, which I don't have. I talked to the DPW about it, and they said, well, you have to talk to the Board of Selectmen about getting a barrel. So that's why I'm here, to find out about getting a barrel. Now, the property I have does not have a house, which is why there was no barrel delivered there. I'm a summer resident. I come up here, this is 15 years now, I've been coming up here and spending my summers in Kingston. Because I've never had a problem with trash before, but they always picked up the bags that I put out there, but now I have to have a barrel, so I wanted to know what is required for me to get a barrel, or am I going to get one?
So, Phil, do you want to comment on this first, or do you have any historical reference here?
As with any of these, the standard was it's residential trash pickup. The site isn't classified as residential, so I put it back to the select board to make the final decision on this. Where we've had mixed uses and things like that, I served it right back to you. So that's why you make the big iron. Again, it's noted as vacant land, so that's why we brought this to your attention.
Did they pick it up before?
I used to put bags out there.
Yeah, and they would stop by and pick it up.
Yeah.
Well, they did that everywhere.
Yeah.
Businesses, residences, anywhere. So, I mean, that's.
What type of exposure are we opening up to? I mean, how many other summer residents are there in town?
So,
should we have a policy for this?
the previous discussion that we had was with an association property that was taxed at a full rate. So the decision was made by the board to issue them a temporary barrel for the season because they were, it was taxed at a full rate as basically as if there was there are buildings on that property that we issued them to. So that was kind of a unique case. I don't know how many seasonal residences there are similar to this gentleman's, and I don't know I don't know that we've differentiated between seasonal residences previously. But in this one, it was noted as vacant land. It wasn't a seasonal residence or a residence, it was just as vacant land, so.
Mr. Riley, how long have it been? I mean, I think that spot's been there for quite some time.
I'm sorry, how long what?
How long has that spot been there, that you've been?
The land?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I've owned it since 2007.
So you own the land that the campus sits on?
I own the
summer.
land,
Okay.
and I come up here in the summertime in my RV, and we live in the RV in the summertime. And I've made arrangements with the town when I first did this about dumping it and all that stuff, all taken care of. I have an electric pole there, so I have electricity that comes into it. So that is my summer home, basically.
Right.
But it is on wheels, so it's not a permanent residence.
So I guess my concern would just be, obviously, because it's never been converted into a residence, so we've never assessed any impact fees. The town can get the benefit of impact fees. And obviously, it's not being taxed as a residence, where other people, they're getting trash pickup as part of their residential taxes. Now, I would not be opposed to us issuing him a barrel, but it would be based off of the subject of when we have to charge people for the additional barrel. And right now, it's currently based off of the 5-year contract, and I believe it ends up being $550 $687. $687 for the 5-year contract.
But that's also for year-round, it's not, for 3 months. I mean, whatever we do with Mr. Riley, there will be others that are gonna come forward, so we wanna be consistent, number one. Number two, would it make sense to have a couple of barrels located on town property where they could bring their trash to?
My opinion is no, and it's because we're not getting that tax revenue. That obviously he's having substantial cost savings by being able to have the property as this. You're not getting assessed on a home for school taxes and all these other things, which are a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not really inclined to get into the proration of how many months they're here. I would rather it's just say, if you want a barrel, it's for the duration of the contract, and this is the cost of it. And I think that's the easiest way to do it.
So that you would get it back every year without having to pay that fee again?
Yes, he would keep the barrel. He can leave it on site, and I'd probably put it away so it doesn't disappear. Well, when you're not up here.
No, I store it, I could store it, but that's not a problem.
So Phil, how are the other seasonals, do they pay how is that assessed?
They're not.
Do they get a trash barrel?
So the only one that came to us as a seasonal residence or a seasonal dwelling was the Great Pond Park Association. And they have a building down there, their clubhouse, and they had trash pickup previously, such as this gentleman did, and they don't have that anymore. So what we had done is, because they are paying full taxes on the property, because there's a building and it's, you know, it's fully assessed as a residence, the decision of the board was to issue them a temporary barrel for the months of summer, and then they turn it back in.
Okay, but that's the only one that have come forward?
To my knowledge, yes.
So we don't know what the seasonal residents are doing with trash?
So I don't know that, I mean, there are a few seasonal residences where people have to vacate, such as the folks who just left.
Right.
You know, they had a seasonal one that they have to be out of there by Columbus Day or whatever, or October 1st. This issue hasn't come up previously, so I'm assuming they probably got a barrel.
Yeah, because I think because most of them have a residence and their tax card shows a residence,
So they get a
they're
barrel.
getting a barrel.
Okay.
So that's why this one, I have no problem with us working with him to issue him a barrel, but I think he would have to pay for it because he's not getting, you know, he's not paying for that service through normal taxes that would support that.
I would agree with that. Question though, does that fee include the recycling and the trash barrel, or just the trash barrel?
Currently, that's only been assessed on the trash barrels. The recycling, we have only charged for the barrel itself. Even though in the new contract, we are being charged for that in the recycling processing fees and things like that. So, but we wanted to encourage recycling, even though it's not cheaper, but,
What's the cost of that barrel?
I believe it's $60 for recycling, but you already have a recycling bin, don't you? Yep.
Oh, you have one
so-
already?
Yep,
Recycling, okay.
So it's only the trash barrel that's in question?
correct.
So,
Okay, what you're saying then is you wanna charge me a fee to get the barrel, the trash barrel?
that's correct. It would be the $687, and that barrel would cover you for the 5-year contract of the solid waste and recycling.
Okay, and if I say I don't want it,
Then
then I'll take care of my trash elsewhere.
Correct, yes, you have that option.
Okay, I have a son that lives by, he can help me out there, so. If it's gonna cost me money, it doesn't make any sense for the short amount of time that I'm here to pay for this, especially a 5-year contract, because I don't even know that I'll be coming back 5 years from now. I'm not getting any younger. So, if that's the case, then we'll just leave it as is.
I think it would be a different story, as you said, that if the property were being taxed as a residential property.
Yeah, but it's, you know,
Which it's not.
it is vacant land. I mean, the town charges me a fee to park on my own property right now, so, which I pay every year. But, other than that,
All right, well, you know, obviously you have that decision, but, and apologize, sorry we couldn't, give you exactly what you wanted, but we're just trying to make sure that we're doing things
no, I
consistently.
understand. They told me to come down and see the Board of Selectmen about it, so I was curious as to what you know, the rules were or whatever. That's all I needed to know.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
for coming in.
have a good night.
Okay, we have, under new business, we have a review request for proposal forms, assessing services and mosquito control services.
Those both need to be sent out again. They expire at the end of the year.
Yep.
So.
So we just need to, the board just needs to be okay with us sending this out for an RFP. And obviously, it would still come, when the bids come in, we would take a recommendation from the department heads overseeing that and decide how we want to proceed.
I have a question on the mosquito, and we have a deadline of August 4th. Is that enough time? Yeah, it's on the front page, the second paragraph, as a deadline of August
Yeah,
4th.
I kind of pick those out of the air, whatever you want for a deadline.
I was just questioning whether or not it was enough time. We got August 19th on the,
Because,
municipal assessing one.
Yeah.
I mean, the municipal contracts are usually fairly substantial, so they may need additional time do you think that's enough time for them during this part of the season? It's,
The previous mosquito contract went, I believe, 2 years on an extension with the same pricing, so I don't think they're gonna walk on us, and
So you think it's okay, the deadline's okay? That's all
I think we'd be fine.
That's all I'm asking.
I think we would be able to find someone
Long
for spray
enough,
for
okay.
mosquitoes if they
Okay.
did not. I was just gonna ask, with regards to the assessing contract and probably the mosquito contract, I just was wondering if you would take input on those, or just a review from others on that, because I know on the assessing one, there were some holes that have kind of come to light as we've been going through things, just things that weren't included in the contract that probably could have been.
So, with that being said, should we talk about this at the next department head meeting before we approve the forms?
I think the mosquito one is probably good to go. We didn't really.
Yeah, that got scrubbed pretty good on the last time it went out for contract. I just think the assessing one, I know personally I ran into a couple issues from my end.
Okay, and maybe Paula has some other issues that we're not aware of, so let's let the department heads take a look at this before we approve
Is
the
everyone,
assessing.
everyone good with that?
Yeah.
With the assessment one?
You didn't want to include the utilities on it, right? We went with San Souci this year because KRT did not.
No, but I think there's some specialty, not specialty things, but I've heard the phrase from multiple assessors from this company that that's not an area that they handle.
Right.
And
it wasn't.
that's fine, but they need to have someone they can call to handle that for the town, because I think there's a lot of things we're missing out, and you and I have had multiple discussions on this, of things where I ask, well, what are they paying for this? And it's like, not much, so.
So I'll get a copy of that out to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Or if we have stuff we can take under board business too, if anyone has anything new.
Well, we do want to bring folks up to date on the DES application, and wherever you want to do it.
So why don't we do it in board business?
That's fine.
Yeah, we'll do that in board
We'll
business.
do some budget stuff, we can do that.
Yeah. So, board business. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, no, did we have this? Oh, did we also have did we talk about the example of the point of entry treatment systems? We gotta talk about that.
That's gonna take a lot more work.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say that it needs substantially more.
I mean, we're probably not at the point where we're ready to discuss this anyway. But I think Susan was doing some data gathering.
Yeah, and I imagine that it's part of the permit application process, is that, do they wanna see, because they have a contract that they're gonna require that we engage in, so.
Right, but that's separate from whatever contract we would have with
The provider.
with the provider, and there are gonna have to be terms and conditions and contracts signed with the people getting the assistance too.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have to decide under what constraints we're putting them in, and what responsibilities do we carry on as a town, and at what point do our responsibilities end. I mean,
More complicated.
there's a lot of pieces.
So what do we think is our workflow on this for, like, some benchmarks that we need to make those decisions? I mean, so obviously, we're in the application process for the system. Now we're looking at, you know, how we want to place an RFP, because we need to work with this in conjunction with the provider who's going to install the systems. We have to work with Sanborn Head, based off of their recommendations, because we also want to discuss about the monitoring wells to, you know, do the hydraulic, you know.
And the flow,
hydrology,
water
and see
flow.
the flow of it. I want us to just try and, I mean, maybe tonight's not the time to do that. Maybe we could all throw in some input to Susan, for our next meeting. People could say, hey, here are the things that I think we need to have on our radar for this, but I think we kind of just want to get a check sheet going of milestones that we should be thinking about hitting, because I don't want to all of a sudden, we get to the application process and we're ready to go and be like, we missed this, and now we're gonna cause a further delay.
Right. It's fine to be thinking about all these things. We have to be careful how much we actually start. For instance, with RFPs, we're gonna need to wait, I believe, until we actually have a contract from governor and council.
Okay.
Because that then actuates the grant, starts it, and sometimes if you start too much work ahead of time.
Yeah, they
you
say
know,
you disqualify yourself.
But we should, there's probably some basic ground rules that we do know about that we're gonna need to address.
Right, and I think that one of the other things is that when we see what's happening now is that DES is reviewing our application, but they're gonna be drafting a contract, which they will bring to governor and council, and we as a community will have to sign on to that contract. And we don't know what those terms are gonna be yet.
That's true.
And until we know that, we might not wanna be making too many decisions.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think anything needs to be detailed of actual language of anything. I just kind of like, hey, we need to be thinking about, once this gets here, we need to forward this to legal counsel for review. I think it's just very broad strokes. We're getting into the summer. I know my schedule gets crazy with the kids, and I just don't want to miss any details. So it'd be helpful for me if I find that we kind of had a flow chart that we're going off of.
Yep, sure.
All right. So if anyone has any ideas or input, if we can forward them to Susan before the next meeting, and then we can discuss if there's any action we can take, or hash through it. Okay, so we did that one, so we'll move on to board business. So we have, I asked to put on the agenda the code enforcement building inspector position discussion. I know everyone got my email, and everyone got Glenn's follow-up email as well, and I appreciate that. I just want to, so just for the public's knowledge, we've encountered some apparent budget shortfalls that were unanticipated. One, a large one for the town, being the solid waste and recycling contract, is going to cause some financial hardship for us that we weren't accounting for. And we discovered that there was the 5th year of the assessing contract. Apparently during the budgeting season, we did not notice that year 5, where the actual assessments are being done, should have been a significant increase in the budget. So we're looking at approximately a $60,000 lack of funds there to do that. So one of the things, our finance director was incredibly busy with the audit last week. That pretty much consumed every minute of her being in this building. So I asked her that once she was done with the audit, starting this week, as she caught up on stuff, we need to do a full review of any contract the town is in, because if we missed that, I wanted to know if we missed anything else. And we're at least at, we're at 5 months into the budget, and I'd rather be finding creative ways that we can address these issues instead of at month 10 and 11, when we're at the end of the year and we've either run out of money. And I know we've been very fortunate to utilize ARPA funds to handle some issues that have come up, but if we deplete that for, I guess, lack of foresight and attention to detail, if we deplete those funds, we're not going to be able to utilize those funds to do some of the other projects we really wanted to move forward in the town.
Plus, those funds are not to supplement our budget, it's about adding things to the benefit of the town and its residents, so.
Correct.
We can't use ARPA funds to fix the budget.
Correct.
But if there are 2 things that we missed, their chances are real good there's a third, and I'd like to find out what that was before the end of the year.
So I proposed that at the very least, the full-time building inspector code enforcement position, it was a very substantial piece of money. Not just the salary itself, but then when you factor in retirement costs, insurance costs, all those other things, it's a substantial salary. We do have provisions in place with part-time inspectors that have stepped up to assist the town in an interim basis while we move through this process. So I had at the very least recommended, until we can do a full audit of all the contracts, that we suspend the hiring in that position. And then further, I had asked that we consider not filling that position until the end of the year for two reasons. One, there could be a substantial cost savings of not filling all the salary and roll-up benefits of that position. So if we needed to use that money to assist in other areas of the budget without having to, go other places, I'd like us to have that option. But then I'd really like us to be able to evaluate if we have some competent part-time folks helping us. I wanted to evaluate whether or not we possibly need a full-time. And I'll be honest, I haven't made up my mind on that. I really want to look at it as an evaluation period till the end of the calendar year to say, hey, a community of our size, do we really need a full-time building inspector code enforcement? Because a lot of the towns I see of similar size and activity, I don't see a lot of that, but it could absolutely be that yes, we do. And I understand that, a few years ago it was pushed to the town, and I did some follow-up with Phil after, especially after receiving your letter, Glenn, and your concerns, to get some understanding of when Phil was on the board, why they were pushing it, and he brought up some items to me regarding the MS4 stormwater management, and he forwarded me the article that he had written to the Carriagetown newsletter at that time, discussing how the state had essentially placed an unfunded mandate on us under the MS4 requirements. And so I get it, we have a duty to absolutely follow up on sites, but I just want to make sure, one of the things, if we take this evaluation period to see what's going on and we put a pause on this position, one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like us to come up with a number of how many commercial sites do we have in town. Yeah, we may have a couple of years where it could be like right to the wall trying to review every single commercial site in town, but then is there going to be a lull? But I would really like us to consider pausing filling this position until the end of the year so we can evaluate whether we need it. I did, on the way here, I did contact our interim building inspector, and I said, hey, if the board needs to make a decision, are you willing to stay on at least until the end of the year so we have this evaluation period? He did say 100% that he would be able to stay on through the end of the calendar year if the board decided to go that route.
On a part-time basis.
Yeah, so I welcome any input from anyone else. Like I said, I really don't have a hard opinion on whether or not it absolutely should be part-time or it needs to be full-time. I think just for my own personal benefit, I'm working directly with a lot of the inspectors now as their liaison. It'd be a great evaluation period for me to see where it's at, but it could be a substantial cost savings. And I did say that maybe we find out that we don't need a full-time person in that position, but it could free up funds where we may ask the town if they would vote to convert it to a permanent part-time position with modified benefits or whatever it may be, or just straight part-time hours. But then what we may need is some additional hours on the admin side of somebody that could come in and inspect, 20 hours a week to assist all the inspectors and provide data and information. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with a creative solution right now because we're in I think fiscally we're in a tight spot. And, we passed with the help of the budget committee, we put a substantial increased budget on the townspeople, and they voted for it. And I just hate the fact that we're coming up short on money that, some of it was just terrible contracts that we really couldn't do anything about. We're living with what we had. But I would have rather proposed a higher budget that the town supported than having to come back and say, hey, we fell short on something.
Well, I agree with you with holding off for a while, but I also have agreement with Glenn because his points about Summit, the warehouse, I don't remember the third one. Seminary, thank you.
Yep.
Were all the three issues that we had discussed as a board in the last couple of years as the basis of the need of bringing on a full-time building inspector, because all three of those are major developmental projects. But we've been waiting for those three to come on board for almost 3 years, because when COVID hit in 2021 or 20, it put us backwards, and so we're still behind. I don't think the next 6 months or so is going to have a negative impact if we wait and see. Our first responsibility is making sure we don't overexpend what our authorization is. So the first thing we have to do is make sure we come up or decide where that shortfall is going to come from, because that is an obligation that the town does have. So that's going to be our number one priority, and secondary to fill that position on a full-time basis. If we can work with the gentleman, Mr. Kyle, I can't remember his last name right now, but if we can work with him over the next 6 months, the inspectors say that's working well, and maybe we don't right now. It's not to say we still don't need one, especially as these other 3 projects start coming, and they will. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so it's going to take some time to find the right person. This is the third time we've had a vacancy in that position too. So it's a unique position, and it's going to be difficult to fill and keep no matter what.
And I will say one thing, and as I'm talking with some other building inspectors, or I know one of the things we want somebody that has inspector experience, but a lot of the times, unless we just have such a great deal that they can't resist it, most people that can be a full-time inspector are already committed in another town in the retirement system. I had a few retired inspectors that reached out saying, boy, if this was a 32-hour position, it would fall within the retirement rules, and that's something I could entertain, but I can't work more than X amount of hours a year because I collect on the state retirement system.
Yeah.
So we're missing out on a pool. If it was able to be done in part-time hours, we are missing out on a pool of people that are qualified, experienced, actual inspectors.
So maybe we need to look at an alternative retirement/savings/401 that would be an option for part-timers, not just in this position, but maybe throughout the town.
That's not what you're saying, though.
No, I'm just saying, what it is because they collect the state retirement, they're limited, the
I
state
see,
restricts
I
them.
see. They
Yeah,
can't,
they either fall under the
I got it.
27 hours average or the 32, depending
I
on
got
when
it.
they retire.
Sorry, I wasn't thinking along that.
No, but ultimately, if we were going to completely change the dynamic of that position, I think it would have to go back before the townsfolk, because they voted in a full-time position.
They did.
If we were going to turn it into something else, I think we would have a duty to return it to the voters to vote on that with any supporting information that we would have.
Especially if we're going to create a new position for part-time administrative support.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem, putting it off till January, but my big thing is I think we need a building inspector. I think we need somebody now that's a building inspector that albeit temporary till January, part-time temporary, but I think if just in general when stuff is going on, someone who actually is, I know they don't have to be certified in the state and all that like other states, but I'm thinking we have the applications in for the job, and maybe there's somebody there that would be interested in part-time building inspector. My concern was not so much with the code enforcement, because if something comes in and it needs looking at, one of us will go look at it, or I'll volunteer to go look at it, or whatever. But I think the building inspector part of it, I think we need site A. And you'll find out more as it goes along with Kyle, but I just think, has the knowledge, but he's not a building inspector or an engineering type person that knows all of the idiosyncrasies of making a decision on the height or weight of a building.
Now, I will say, one of the people that reached out to me that falls under that retirement system, they did indicate to me that if the board went this route where we were going to hold off, if we wanted to speak with them, they'd be willing to come over and help us. They are currently the longest serving building inspector in their community, with almost 2 decades of experience being an inspector after retiring from another career. But they said if we had some complicated inspection issues, that they'd be willing to assist the town.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's somebody who's an actual inspector that could probably help us. So we may, but I said, listen, I need to understand, we need to understand what direction the board may be going before we open it up to anything else. But I think it would be good to, maybe have another resource available to us.
Well, even if this particular fellow is interested, let's get him in, let's talk to him, let's get him introduced, so Kyle knows that, and he's a resource.
This
is the guy here, if you really got something, that you don't wanna make a decision on because you're not quite sure, have this guy come over.
Yeah.
Help out, but we need to get him as a part of the town.
Yeah, and he may be helpful as we put together that review committee to hire some, because as I said, we've been through 3 people this past year, and they've left for different reasons, but maybe we're missing something that we have not recognized as so far. Just
And may be able to cover, if there were a code enforcement issue that needed somebody that's got some knowledge of this, with this particular fellow could do that also. Something more.
Do we have, has it only been a week since we?
It's been a couple weeks and we got a lot of, there's a lot of applications.
No, so do we know how well it's working for the inspectors at the park? Is Kyle busy the entire
So
time?
he's definitely busy, and he said, because he has a full-time job and he was just offering some, he said, listen, no doubt right now, these first couple of weeks, he goes, I'm triaging, making sure we handle any of the emergent important stuff. And that's the thing is I just think we don't know yet. And that's why I would be asking not the board to take a vote to absolutely not fill it, just as a consensus that we hold off on this position, cancel the posting right now, because if anything changes between now and January, I don't want to hamstring the board to saying, well, now we already voted that we're not taking this up. I would like it to be brought up to if situation completely changes and the board's like, no, we need to move forward, I don't want to prohibit that from happening.
We need to be flexible, and I totally agree with you. It's a learning experience for us as well. Let's give it our best shot. Let's see what Kyle can do for us and his current inspectors. And we're gonna be reassessing this almost on a regular basis anyway, so it's not gonna be anything new or surprising.
So the inspectors haven't indicated that they're concerned?
No, and I asked him, I said, do you think you can manage it from what you've seen so far? And like I said, something else could come up, and he says, yeah, this is way out of my wheelhouse, I can't do this. But based off of what he's seen so far, he feels confident that he could absolutely manage it till the end of the year.
Okay.
So that we can make a determination.
Okay.
So I guess with that, the way that I'd like to proceed with this is that I get a consensus from the board that we withdraw the current posting. Susan would just have to send a letter to them saying, hey, we apologize, but at this time the board is taking a pause on filling this full-time vacancy. If we open it up, when we open it up again, we will maintain your resumes on file and we will reach back out to you.
Do you want to take a look at those resumes anyways? Or just go with them?
Let's wait until we do this contract review.
Okay, all right, that's fine, that's fine.
Would be mine.
What if we do take a look at the resumes and, let's say, some real interesting individuals stand out. I realize it was posted as a full-time position. But let's say there was someone in there and in discussion they were willing to do a part-time gig as opposed to full-time. If we've got good candidates, do we want to pass them up? And I don't know,
Well, we've got a no quantity with Kyle right now, and that seems to be working, right? It's only been
and I would have no problem saying, if Susan sent that letter, said at this time we're not going to be filling the full-time position, the board is looking at interim part-time candidates. If anyone is still interested, please let us know. I don't want to waste their time, I don't want to waste our time, but I want this to be completely fluid. I really want us to have flexibility with this, because
I understand the budget shortfall, and I certainly don't want to be spending money needlessly, given the financial situation that we're in. So I don't have any issue with holding off on the full-time person for now. But that warehouse project, granted, it hasn't started yet, but it has been approved. And they're still working through getting their conditions done. And once that starts, it's going to be a busy time for the inspectors.
And we could grab somebody that's part-time and saying, hey, we'd like to hire you on an hourly basis to work this project for us.
Yeah, sure.
Or that guy that that's so
that has
experienced,
expertise,
maybe the right person to bring in for that warehouse project.
So, and the other 2 projects that I mentioned in my note haven't even been approved yet.
Right.
So
they're still.
So they're a ways off. So I think given that, you know, we're okay to wait as long as we've got
We
competent
have
help
a
in the
plan
meantime.
B, we
Yeah.
have a plan B, and that's the important.
And like I said, I just want to make it clear to everyone, I was just, this wasn't a, hey, this is my idea and I'm gonna
No,
ram
I
it through.
and I
It
agree.
just, I wanted an idea, but I haven't made a decision of where I think we need to be, because I need more data.
I think you are absolutely right to raise the issue, especially with those two particular shortfalls. I mean, that, as I said, if there's two, there's gotta be a third, and things come in three, so.
And
Just in case.
And there aren't a lot of opportunities for us to find significant savings.
Yep.
This is one
That's
of those.
correct.
Yeah.
This is one of those.
Especially in this kind of an economy, where the cost of everything is so far up.
I mean, the costs of running the town they are pretty much what they are.
Yeah.
And, you know, to find significant savings is hard. This is one
Truth that, yeah.
that could work, so.
Yeah.
So if we're fine with that, that's how we'll proceed forward. I don't want to take an official vote, because like I said, I don't want to pigeonhole us into one course of action. I want to have some
I'm fine with that.
Just notify everybody.
That, yeah, it's on hold for now.
Assuming that, you know, with the caveat that, I mean, we could, at any point in time,
Yep.
reassess.
say, hey,
Yep.
we need this, yes.
Could we
And
open
that's why I
it?
wanted to leave it open. Okay. All right, board business, we had some land use change tax bills. I think most people went through and signed those. I didn't see any concerns with that. They were in the orange folder. If that hasn't made it to you yet, it looked like R42-1A, R1119, R32-9A, R1917, and I think there was more.
I think there's 2 pages to each one.
I know, we had some other board business. I know Chuck wanted to bring something up.
I would like you to, say something about the solar hills, because I had questions that he's still working out there, and I just wanted to be clear, we're still working on it. We should have those letters by the end of the week.
Yes, so yeah, it looks like Susan had a note in here that, they're drafting the cease and desist language for the Solar Hill estate, so obviously we can't expect him to stop until, I'm sure he's
Yeah,
aware.
we have to get that out.
He may be aware of what we discussed, but,
Yeah.
I'm sure once the cease and desist come in. So I guess with us being on hiatus, we've already voted to take the cease and desist. Does the board feel comfortable with me signing off as the chair on those
Instead of
once
all
we
the
have it back?
signatures.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah.
we've already voted on to issue the cease and desist, so
Yeah.
I just don't want to delay it another couple of weeks before we meet again, so.
Unless when it comes through, if you have any questions,
Yes,
you know,
yeah,
we
There's
could
a
always,
red flag.
we could always get back together quickly.
Correct.
yep.
So, following up on that, we do have a note about the bond, and accordingly, the current bond is $126,000.
So I did follow up with the Director of Public Works, and they had written, when they did the phase 2, they did reevaluate, Dennis Quintal did reassess the bond, during phase 2, and they are confident that the current amount of the current bond would be enough to cover should that project be abandoned.
Okay, that was my step. And then the other thing there is another house for sale there, and we are understanding that there is no occupancy permit for that. And I've had a brief conversation with calling the realtor of that particular property, just to let them know that there is no building permit and therefore, if you sell it.
No building permit, no occupancy permit.
No
That one had a building permit.
That one had a
Yeah,
building
no
That one had a
occupancy
building permit.
permit.
Yes.
Now, maybe he hasn't even asked for it yet, but history would dictate that he'll do whatever he wants to do, so I don't know if anybody called that realtor, Susan, or.
I think that's kind of a touchy thing. It's like, I don't know where our obligation or overstepping boundary lies in a situation like that. That's kind of due diligence of, trust me, I don't want anyone getting set up for failure for it, but there is a line that we have to ensure that we don't cross and interfere with those type of affairs. So I think we need to tread cautiously on that one.
As far as
I think obviously if a realtor reaches out or a home inspector reaches out to the town, we can say that we do not have an occupancy permit on file for that property, but there is a little bit of due diligence on the buyer, but I don't know if we should be contacting a realtor.
So, questions, I have a lot of questions about this. So how, with that development, there's houses there, and there's some without certificate of occupancy, so how did they move in without the town recouping money to this point?
I think they unloaded stuff from a truck and just walked it in.
They just walked
And
But now we
hope nobody will
know,
notice.
but now we know, so how do we
Yeah, that's why we.
Well, that's why that's why the cease and desist.
On that
yeah,
particular
outline
one.
that they have to get their certificate of occupancy or they're in violation and they could be assessed penalties and fines. And in order to get the certificate of occupancy, they have to pay the impact fees that are associated with that as well before it can be issued. But at this point, we can't just show up as the town and say we're physically removing you out of there. The only way that happens is with a court order from a Superior Court judge.
But so for this house that people are currently living in that are selling and there's no certificate of occupancy?
Nobody's living in there.
Oh,
That one's a new construction.
Got
That
it,
one's- yes.
got it, all right.
Yes, there's no one currently living in there.
All right, because I was gonna say that what would stop us from,
They're currently living in the one that he is building and has family living there.
okay.
They owe land use change taxes as well.
Yes.
That are delinquent.
So just did a little work on the shortfall with the budget, and or what, and how we may be able to recoup some of that. As we found out, Susan sent a copy out of the final contract for the assessing, and it's like, you know, $84,750, we're supposed to be paying, you know, $7,000 a month, and we budgeted 20. So, not only do we have the 84,000 shortfall on waste management, we've got another 64 approximately on assessing. And if you look at the water bill thing, there's another minimal there of $8,000 short on supplying the water.
There's my third one.
So we get, you know,
Comes in
whatever,
threes.
it's 150,000 shortfall without looking at anything else.
What was the water supply one
The water supply,
for the residents?
yes,
Or was that
That's
the
over
water
the budget?
cooler?
no, it's the 41, whatever, yeah, 441107, water, it says water cooler rental, but it's not, it's the water.
The water being delivered to the
Correct,
residents.
and we're at $6,000 right now with that. And we've only budgeted 20.
And we have
The last-
7 months to
The
go.
last 3 months has been over $1,200 for the 3.
So
Keep in mind that water delivery will stop once the new system
Right,
is
right.
installed.
Right, but
So-
that's gonna still take a little time.
So
Yeah, I'm
didn't-
just-
Right, we don't know exactly when.
Just figuring-
Hopefully-
We'll get reimbursed, but we,
Didn't Paula mention
Oh, that's
something
not
about the
part of
IT
reimbursement.
contract as
That's a
well? I
services
thought we had a
thing.
Hold
shortfall
on,
there.
we got a couple conversations going on.
sorry.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I thought Paula had mentioned something about a shortfall in the IT contract as well.
that was the, was it 8,000?
That was one that was already brought up.
That was,
Yeah,
that's
that was
been taken care
before.
of.
Oh, it has, okay.
So, we've got the 150 with the shortfall, give or take. We're at 40% for 5 months, which would indicate everybody's budget line items are right where they should be. You know,
But that
give or
doesn't
take.
mean they have underspent in some
Well, no,
accounts.
we'll look at it again in September, when it gets a little bit closer, it gets closer to budget time, and say, okay, where are you gonna be there? Which will give us an indication, you know, of how much more tightening down do we have to do. So we do have, Susan did the update on the American Rescue Plan thing, we got $395,940, $400,000 left in that. I mean, that's as a backup to the backup, at least we know we have it if there are items, not necessarily, you know, new items, but we can refer back to this if it's legal to be able to do it. However, the other item is we do have the 60-odd thousand from the grant, which is in the general fund as unencumbered income. So, you know, mentally or physically, we can allocate some of that to help the offset.
Which grant was that?
For
The generator grant from the
at the
fire
fire station.
Okay.
so we got that directly. Speaking of the land tax or timber tax, we budgeted like $8,000 for it, and we just took in over 45,000 in those 4 invoices, doing my math right. There's 4 of them in there, most of them are $10,000 or $11,000. So again.
The land use change tax.
Yes, is that, yeah.
Not the timber tax.
Oh, there was the timber, well.
We did have some timber tax ones that came out, I was gonna say.
I didn't remember those as land use change.
Yes, and those equaled out to be quite a bit of money, significantly more than we budgeted, because the budget at the time for revenue is an estimate. Who knew, you know,
But
we have all these.
unanticipated revenues cannot just automatically offset bottom line budget.
No, but it's there.
We still can't spend more than we were budgeted to spend.
Authorized, we
Well,
can't
even if
spend
Get
more
more
than.
money in, we weren't
But
expecting.
that's an estimated income, that's not
Yeah.
a budget item. So, anyway, that is, it just, you know, that's something that just came in, it's there as far as what we'll have over the budget. The only other the other factor that we have is that we do have probably 50 to 60 final money to be turned back in from the fire station. The problem, or the question at this point, and I gotta deal with Paul on that, we have to, is that what can we use that for? It's coming back. I understand it generally doesn't go to the general fund. It should be, but it has to be given back to the taxpayers. So I think, we talked about it a little bit, we'll have to get the proper definition. It may be able to go back to pay down on the bond, because that's where it came from initially. So if it can pay down on the bond, and let's say it's, you know, whatever, $50,000, they pay it down on the bond, ultimately that's $50,000 that we would have normally been taking out of the budget to pay for that payment. So it is something that at least shows that we do have some excess money there, but we're just not sure how we can get at that yet.
And I think that is that money is much more strictly limited. And I wouldn't feel comfortable doing anything other than returning it to the bond.
Well, you don't return it to the bond.
Paying down the bond.
Paying down the bond,
Yes.
just because it would have to go back to the trustees of the trust fund.
Correct.
Depending on how it goes back there, we need to have it earmarked, or it'll sit there like a lot of other stuff.
Right,
and
but
we'll never get access to it.
the critical piece for us as a board is meeting the fiduciary responsibility to expend no more than what was authorized, regardless of the source of that income. You can't just spend money because we have it.
And one of the messages I plan on bringing towards our next department head meeting is that this is one of those years where, hey, at the end of the year, you find, hey, actually, I saved money here, I saved money here, here's something I would really like to get. This is not that year to be looking for those type of purchases. We are going to need those funds to accommodate these other things to live within our budget. So I think that's going to be a big message that I'm going to push at our department head meeting next month when we have that.
Anyway, that's kind of a quick recap of just looking at what's out there and what.
Well, that's good, at least we know what's going on, that's the good news.
Right.
May not be all good, but we know at least what's going on,
Yeah.
what we're facing.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No.
I know you had an item you want to bring up.
2 actually, maybe 3.
Bring them all up.
Maybe 3. They'll be quick. I just wanted to make sure that the board and folks who might be watching are aware that our final application for the PFAS remediation for installing the systems, that final application went in last week. It was acknowledged that it was received, and I know that they're working on it because I spoke with the administrator today. They have it, they're working on it. And the reason I spoke with them today is because after submittal of the application, a question came up from a resident who was asking about, were they going to be getting one of the systems? And Susan had a conversation with folks at Sanborn Head, and turns out that 7 of the properties, of 7 of the 20 that we had applied for grant for putting a system in, had PFAS levels in exceedance of the allowable limits back in 2019, but when testing was done recently, they're below that level. And so the question was, now that they're below, would they still be eligible under the grant to get a system installed? And so Sanborn Head said, you need to talk with DES to see what they would do. And the administrator of DES said today that because they had exceedances in 2019, even though they don't show it today, they said that we can still cover those systems under the grant.
Oh, good.
So that got done. So we're still moving forward, and we don't know when we're going to hear, but the next thing will be that, some sort of an announcement to us that they've approved the final grant application and that they're going to start drafting contracts for governor and council. So I don't know the time frame on it. But
yeah, and once we get to that point, I don't mind if I'll draft up a letter as chairman of the board and have the board review it, asking for support of the executive council. Once we get to that
Rick Russman left, but he actually had asked me a question at the celebration at the Nichols building over the weekend, asking me where we could possibly get help if we wanted to apply for grants. If there's lots of federal money still coming under, under legislation that has been approved over the last year or so. And a larger community or a city has staff to apply for grants and to watch out for this stuff, and a lot of the smaller communities are going to kind of be left behind if they aren't aware of things and if they don't have the staff to apply. So, Rick was asking me, well, is this something that the Planning Commission could help with? And I said, well, it could be, except that they really don't have the staff to do it. But it turns out that the New Hampshire Municipal Association is actually piloting a technical assistance program right now, and they're looking for communities that might be interested. And there's no cost to us, and how productive it would be, I really don't know. But I went online today, I checked it out. It's a very simple application, it's all done online, it's due no later than July 5th. They are targeting communities that have a more financial need with regard to their residents, and Kingston doesn't really fall into that category because we're fairly well off in general as a community. But nonetheless, I don't know what kind of response they're going to get, and I think that it's for the very little amount of application that it is, it might be worth us putting our name in the hat. So I'm throwing it out to the board and making that a suggestion. And I was hoping Rick was going to be here, but I can catch up with him and let him know about that.
I don't know that we have resources internally to devote time for our staff to help out. I mean, we haven't had enough time taking care of business as it is. So I'm not in favor of reallocating staff time to support this.
Well,
and you're saying we're going to be part of a study group through the municipal association.
What it would be
is take some time from some people.
Well, right. Well, to be honest, the only way that it really would be helpful to us is if we have an identified project that we think we would want to go after funding.
Yeah, okay.
So and that's where I would look to Phil and other department heads if there are projects that they think that there could be federal money on the line that we could use some help trying to secure, then this might be an option.
And we should also reach out to the community to see if there are members of the community who are well versed in grant writing who would like to come forward and help us put together a grant proposal.
That's a good idea.
And we used to have more help that way in years past. It's been a long while, but it may be time to reach out again, especially where more individuals are working from home. They may have the flexibility to assist us. There didn't used to be many grants available anymore either. That was another. The well had been dry for quite some time. If for some reason it's opening up and we qualify, that would be awesome, because that would certainly save us some money in the long run. I'm not poo-pooing this at all. I just being a little concerned.
I agree. We have so much on our plate. I just don't want this to become somebody else's additional work. But yeah, if this is a resource that we can get that they can assist in that, I think that'd be great. I know we recently got a full-time grant writer at the county, and I know because the county sometimes does grants that are like pass-through grants to communities because it has to filter through that.
Yeah.
I know I have to do a lot of the Department of Justice ones for local police departments because we have to be the pass-through.
Do we know what technical assistance means?
Not fully.
Okay.
I think it's more, I honestly don't know.
Okay. Because, if it's kind of a 50-50, right, where we would need to, they would help us and guide us, probably not writing the grant, but.
Could we maybe follow up some of those questions, because and I know obviously we'd have to submit the application, so we'd really have to have a decision at our next meeting of moving forward with that to submit it in time. Would you feel comfortable just asking a couple of those clarifying questions of what they expect that to be?
Sure, I can do that.
And Ellie, I like the idea of putting it out to the community
Yeah.
to see if somebody, because I'm sure there's one person out there who writes
Did we
grants.
get any response from the public on the pay salary study committee?
I think the committee was supposed to meet and then discuss who they wanted to add, weren't they?
Well, I think we
Well, you have
need,
to-
we need the
Community
community to know to
members.
submit.
Oh, to
We-
submit their letters.
submit their
Yeah,
letter
I
of
wasn't sure how
interest.
you wanted to do that
Okay.
because
Oh, you
the
haven't done
core.
that.
had-
Yeah,
Alright.
can you put that, can we get that put out this week? That,
Okay.
you know, just give it to,
Contact.
give it
Okay,
14 days or something, anyone that's interested.
okay, I'm sorry.
And
I
then as,
thought
as
that-
soon as we have those letters, I can set up a meeting with the pay salary study, group where we can review any of those. Cause I did have I had some folks asking me about it today.
Okay, yeah, I'll put that out tomorrow.
To the web, is the paper, and, Facebook.
Got a third one, Glenn?
I do. And this is a question for you, Chris, as chair, but I also want to throw it out to the board, and that is that on the days that we do our department head meeting, I realize that, you know, we have very specific department heads here, and that there's a public comment period at the end, but could we have a slot in there, sort of an open opportunity for other boards and committees, that if one representative from that group were interested in addressing the board, that would be, they'd at least know that there's one time during the month that they can be here and they'd have a spot on the agenda.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. We could, you know, we could kind of insert it in there like a public, any other board or committee, input or comment that they want to bring to attention. I have no problem with that.
But they've always been able to do that.
I know.
But they need to know that they're really wanted.
Yeah,
They don't want to feel like they're crashing the party.
No.
Right, if we do this, we could reach out to all the groups, and
Yeah.
maybe we do through our liaison.
Yeah,
activities,
exactly,
And we bring it to them.
And let them know that.
And let them know that if they, and not to invite the whole committee, but
Right.
Yeah, just,
the chair or a representative,
yes.
to come and speak to the board if
They have an area,
if they-
issue
if
of
they-
concern.
an issue, or if they want to just bring something to the board that, you know, for information purposes, just, and that way they'd have a spot on the agenda, and if they want to use it, fine, and if not, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. So if we can make sure when we send out the agenda for the department heads, if we can just make sure we send that to the other boards and committees in town, Susan.
Yes.
Great, that would work, nice.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Public comment number 2. Bill?
It should just say Phil's gone.
We should just put him on the agenda.
I had sent a quote for software. One part I didn't include in that, and I wanted to bring, was, there was another company that we had gotten a quote from. And it was a very large file, so it was substantially more than what I had sent to you.
Oh, this is the whole thing. This is one set right here.
So,
Yeah.
no, that's a description of one of the modules, but then there's the quote for each of the additional modules. If you wanted the follow-on documentation, I can certainly send it to you. This was certainly the caviar option that, as a realist, I did not see us getting. I would love to have it, but the iWorks program that I sent to you has most of the functionality that program does, a little more bare bones. But the problem we have with the Department of Public Works is recent events have shown that having everything locked in someone's head is not a good place to keep it for continuity. That's not knocking anyone, but there's a lot of information that is processed through that department, through spreadsheets, through maps, through different mapping softwares, and
Have to look at it there.
it's not very accessible. Unless you know where to look, unless you know what you're looking for, that information is not readily available, and that is costing us money. It is also costing us efficiency. So, I just wanted to start the conversation. Obviously, we were tasked with this software hunt before, you know, the money gods stopped smiling favorably upon us, but I do feel this is something that we need to start looking at seriously. One of the main features here is the mapping of the roads and having all of our stormwater, all of signage, all of these things that we're legally responsible for tracking. You know, making sure that a stop sign is the right visibility, you know, reflectivity and things like that. When a road was paved, when it's on a snowplow route, rather than having maps or handouts that I give to a driver, I can have him just pull it up on his phone and he knows the route that he's plowing that day. When we have stormwater contractors come in and clean out the catch basins every fall, we can allow them access to the stormwater mapping. They can go point by point by point. It shows them right on a Google map where they're going, and then they can make any notes about the catch basin right in there rather than handing us a stack of papers at the end of it. And I don't have the staff to input that, so it goes in a folder somewhere and is never seen again. So this, you know, I have 2 more years on my contract, and this would make it much easier to fire me at the end because you'd have all the information right there and you can plug someone else in there if you so choose. But that's one of my goals, is to make it so you don't need me. Not that I want to be gone or anything, but it should be, you know, man down drill. Someone else can step in and still do the job. And I think there's a lot of information that the town does have, but it's just scattered everywhere. So this is something that would allow us to do that. This would also allow us, it has kind of a rudimentary feature and it can be upgraded later, but all of the equipment that we run, this would be a database where we can track all of the maintenance on that equipment, when services were performed, when recalls. I just picked up the mail today, we had a recall on one of our plow trucks. So making sure that we're scheduling those things and getting them in there so that the safety aspects are taken care of. I was pretty proud of the fact that by implementing a maintenance program, we had 0 breakdowns in our equipment over this plow season. We had 1 with a subcontractor, but that was his fault, not mine. But, you know, our department is driven by equipment, and we need to make sure that it's functioning at all times because we need it in an emergency most of the time, as do the other departments. But so I guess I just wanted to see if there were any questions, if I could schedule a demo. These guys don't really have the information right out there, but they will do a demo and kind of explain the functionality and just what you can do for our department. So.
Yeah, I'd like to see a demo. These are the type of upgrades that I'd really love us to see doing some stuff with ARPA funds with, to implement stuff like this. One of the things that I briefly discussed with Susan today, because I know with the ARPA funds, we have to have them earmarked or at least committed by December 31st of 2024, and they have to be spent by 2026. One of the things that I was looking at is if because we're talking about software maybe for the permitting office, but if we're looking at software for your folks as well, I'd like us to just double check the nuances. If we entered into a long-term, say a 5-year contract, and we paid it, and it was an upfront paid contract, and maybe we could get cost savings where they wouldn't implement, you know, mandatory 5% increases in the annual cost by paying it all upfront. I'm curious if that would satisfy the requirements of the ARPA, that even though it's a multi-year contract that carries past 2026, if we paid it upfront, if that's an appropriate and legal use of it. So that's one option I'd like to look at, because then if we, you know, a cost savings like this, I know like one of these I was looking at said like your year 1 cost is like 23,000, and then your annual cost is 11,000. So if we had a package that was essentially $60,000 if we paid it all up front, you know, maybe that would be a way to kind of extend the life of that ARPA funding, and that allows you 5 years to prepare for the budgeting increase of that, and when it goes back out to contract.
Yeah, and this is the, so the first year is 14,000 just based on all the engineering and inputting that goes into that, but each additional year is 9,000, so it does actually get cheaper once it's just in maintenance mode. It's just the tech support and the customer support that's required initially is in there. But yeah, I can certainly inquire with them about that.
Yeah, I'd like to just find out the legality of that, because it'd be an option. Then obviously if we got into a multi-year contract like that, then it probably would have to go to RFP because it would exceed the $25,000 threshold.
I think the problem with that, and what I found through this whole process, is we looked at a lot of software, and there's a lot of things out there for huge departments that, you know, like the ones that I just handed out.
Yeah.
You know, it's the Cadillac, and I'm sure for someone like Nashua, or I think Lawrence uses them, a lot of the big, you know, Brookline, it's a drop in the bucket to them, whereas it's a big portion of the bucket for us. So This, I think, kind of rides the sweet spot of cheap enough, but does what we need it to do. And I think if in 3 to 5 years we find that we need something better or more functionality, we can go from there. But I think this is a good first step that kind of gets things digitized, which, again, to your point, is what the ARPA funds have been used for.
So, I mean, this is, like I said, for me, this is something that I think is a great use of the ARPA funds, so I would like us to at least continue exploring this. Obviously not making a decision tonight, but I'd like to get more on this, because I know we've been talking about I'm jumping into this later in the game, but apparently everyone's been talking about getting different types of software for years, and everyone just keeps talking about it, kicking the can down the road, and we never implement it.
So, and I wasn't part of any of those discussions, so, I mean, this might have already been talked about, but, you know, if we're looking at a software package for that particular use, you know, how transportable is it, and how well does it integrate with other software that we might want to be connected to the town?
Correct, and that's why I want, you know, if we're gonna have a demo, I want Paula to come up with this time finance somehow. Is there a segue into permitting, or is it just is it that too apples?
Susan, I know you guys actually looked at them previously.
Yes, and they're still calling me about the permitting, and it's gonna be the same amount roughly as they quoted us before, but I didn't know if we put it together with yours, if we could get any sort of a deal. It seems like it's all in compartments though.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, anything that can cross as many platforms as we could possibly need in the town. So the one thing that you find with software companies is, you know, they can make anything work with something else for the right amount of money.
Yep.
But patching it in is always a good call.
Yeah, and this is all cloud-based, so it would be, you know, any of the employees could use it on their phones to input things, and
Do we have the hardware on hand to sustain it now?
yeah, it would all be just, I think their Chrome, they recommend Chrome as the browser, but it would just be an internet program, like just opening your email or anything else from that. So it would be, you know, laptops and tablets would handle it fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel comfortable if the rest of the board does, he's setting up a demo and just make sure we invite any other departments that it could be applicable to.
Sure.
Okay, so get some dates put together.
For them as well.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Any other public comment number 2?
I don't have a public comment, but I did have one. I think it's more board business. I was asked about the front door policy, whether it should be locked or not.
Oh, yeah.
Adam brought it up. Even if somebody's up here, even if there's more than one person up here, he thought that the policy in the past was that it's always locked and people have to go to the downstairs. Do we want to change that?
And Paula was the one that asked me about it, because she's up here all the time, and and Marissa's frequently up here. So do we need to still maintain the locked front door policy, where now we actually have staff on a regular basis up here? For example, when Ellen was here, she was only here a couple of days a week, sometimes 3, I shouldn't say that, usually Mondays and Thursdays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays. But with Paula up here all the time, she was saying, well, why, you know, it's a little, why would we want to keep the front door locked all the time?
Speaking, no.
Yeah, right.
Any input on that?
Right on cue.
I hate stepping out of my booth. My fear, no disrespect to Marissa, no disrespect to Paula. Sometimes they got their door shut, sometimes Paula has to go down and talk to somebody downstairs. I don't want to give figures, I don't want to give specifics. But if no one's watching, a significant amount of money out of that room in a very short period of time. That's my concern about whatever happens as far as the system. I'm not like, oh, I agree about it. That's my concern, that it's a lot in there that is not very hard to get out of there.
No, and I feel that, you know, the entrance out back is the primary entrance for business activities. There's really no members of the public that are coming to speak with the finance department generally, unless it's by an appointment.
issue there is that they're coming in to see Marissa, and
Right.
people come, and sometimes they know their hours, sometimes they'll come after the hours, especially for the food pantry. If we have to reroute them back downstairs, it's
Well,
apt to scare them off,
you
or
know
apt
what?
to, I don't know, I mean, but we do have.
Let's talk with Marissa and Paula, because they're the ones predominantly on this level anyways. Why don't we ask them for something, have them talk directly to us?
How about buildings and facilities?
So I don't know with the ARPA situation, whether the front stairs are still on the menu, but it wasn't. We modified them so the sides are at least not a complete tripping hazard, but the signage we put in front was attempting to minimize the amount of traffic going in the front door. We do have cameras on the facility now. That was completed on Friday, and there are cameras watching the main hallway downstairs. I would say from a liability standpoint, we want to kind of keep our traffic coming in and out of that door versus this one, just because stairs are involved. The door is kind of old and rickety, and God love it, it's historic and everything, but I think the main reason that was done, the door was locked, is just to keep traffic where eyes could be on them.
Yeah, and I don't, if Marissa needs to let somebody in by appointment, I don't think there's an issue with that, but my personal feeling is we should, unless it's for public meetings and hearings when it's being used, my feeling is that it should be primarily locked.
I agree.
Any opposition to that?
Well, if we have the cameras and the door is locked, where Adam is at, not that somebody couldn't break in there, kick the lock. I don't know, I just think, it's the town building and people do come and go out of there, should it be accessible there. Now, eventually, if you'll close the steps down, it's gonna take care of that problem, but, that's just.
Well, and I think part of my rationale right now is because of the condition of the stairs, like, I really want to avoid people using it as much as possible without closing it down.
How do we get those stairs fixed?
Very careful, very mindful.
If there's anything for the right price. Very expensive.
Yeah, very expensively and
I know.
non-historically.
I think the low-cost option was tried, and we are where we are. That's very bad soil there that's going to have to be excavated or stabilized in some manner, and so it's not going to be a cheap, quick project.
Can we sell steps? Like stained glass windows?
There you go. We can certainly look at that.
You could try it.
One of the options I was looking at was a precast set of stairs, a custom precast, not ones going to a mobile home park or anything, but just having a precast set of stairs with granite facing on them, so it would still have but it would just be one set of stairs coming up to the main doorways, and we could turn the side areas into gardens or parking spots, whatever we want to do, but maybe lowering, given the volume that we put on those stairs, maybe shrinking them down so the material costs aren't so excessive. And it could be done as a 1 or 2 part precast set of stairs that could just be kind of snapped together in place once we have the ground figured out.
I think that is a great project for a warrant article.
And again, I mean, that's not something I don't know whether we want to do a building committee or something to look at that.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a lot of people that want input on that.
Especially if you're changing the historic aspect of the building.
And just to be clear, this is the 4th iteration of those stairs, so there's nothing
Right,
historic
right.
about them or any previous
Okay.
one, so.
This has been an ongoing
Got it.
ache.
So the majority of the people who come here are going downstairs, right?
I mean, that's for the people that need public access, other than human services, which
Right.
I think a lot of her stuff is generally by appointment. So if she wanted to still have somebody knock on the door because they're gonna carry stuff out or whatever it may be, I have no issues with that, but I think it should be locked, because the finance office, the sensitive data, if Paula just has to step up for a minute, so there's sensitive data in there, there's access to.
But what stops somebody from coming from downstairs upstairs?
Nothing. They could slip into the kitchen.
Nothing but we'll have,
I'm just saying-
nothing but we'll have them on camera.
I mean, I don't think that way, I don't think nefariously like that, but if the concern is safety from the stairs, that's one aspect, right? I mean, that should just shut it down right there, because from a safety aspect, from a liability aspect. But if it's from we're afraid people are gonna steal stuff,
No, I guess the other part that I look at is too is that Paula shouldn't be the front desk because she has the office there of
Absolutely.
everyone coming in
Absolutely.
and using her as a directory
Sure.
of where they need to go for other services.
Sure.
No, but this is coming from Paul.
Yeah, she wants it open.
Right. She mentioned it. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I don't know that's a burning desire, don't get me wrong, but,
I mean, like I said, a big thing, if we didn't have the state of affairs that the steps were in, I may be looking to go another way right now, but.
because if someone really wants to get up here, all they have to do is go in that kitchen.
Yeah.
And right up the stairs, right over here, come in.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even know.
Right now, you just hold.
Right.
I'm sure there are the smart folks out there that would have thought of that, if they were gonna do that. If they were gonna do that. So,
I say we continue as is for right now.
yeah, I'm okay with that.
Locked
For
all the
now.
time, she can just open it if she knows she has an
Yeah.
appointment coming.
Yeah. Correspondence, applications, purchase orders, we did have a special event application reference Reach the Beach relay that was filled out, we usually.
And
See
I
that event
signed
occur
one
every year.
without thinking, and it was for Mr.,
Yeah, the sad
Yeah,
one.
and so, well, let's talk about the Reach the Beach one first.
Okay, the easy
You know, the police department has given their input, as far as, you know, the needed details for the event at the particular crossings, which they do every year when that happens. You know, I know they put up the Reach the Beach folks tend to put out all the signage and, that they need to that event. They always seem to have a lot of personnel on staff at the different stop locations, so, I have no issues with this, you know, we've seen it.
oh yeah,
go off without a
many
hitch
years,
for a lot of
many
years
years.
now, so.
Yeah, I have no problem with
So
that.
well run event.
All right, so I take a motion to approve the special event application for the Ragnar Reach the Beach event.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then we have the other special event application. It looks like, Mr. Pellegrino was looking for two additional dates, or, not Pellegrino, sorry.
P something.
Bobby from Satellite.
June 20th, 5 to 10, and that's a Tuesday, June 20th, and then Sunday, June 25th, from 1 to 4.
And so he has not come in to do like just the gambit of dates and his indications, so he called me early to say, hey, I talked to Susan, I was looking for additional dates, and he's indicating that his hope is that he can show a pattern of no complaints. We didn't receive any complaints that I'm aware of, and of the last events that just occurred.
We approved 5.
We approved 2.
We approved 2.
2.
Two, so,
We
yeah, for
approved
the
two.
first one, and now this is two.
Oh, in May, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
We approved 2 events. He did one on a Sunday and one on a Tuesday.
And that's what he's got in here
And
now.
then he's asking for another Sunday and another Tuesday, so
We're
that's
assuming the Tuesday one is the Lions Club one.
Right.
so.
I am assuming that, I don't know for
No,
a fact.
that's what he set up.
So, and I have to imagine if anyone had an issue with the events, we would have absolutely heard about it, because nobody's shy about it.
And none of us heard from anyone, and that usually happened before.
I did ask a resident who has,
Lives nearby.
yeah, and they said it wasn't a problem.
Okay. So, based off of the board's previous, indication that we would be willing to approve up to 10 events, as we have done with another, and not having any issues on these previous 2, I would make a motion that we approve the special event permit for the 2 dates listed on that application.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Only that, as I was a no vote on the other one, I will be a no vote on this one, just so you know.
Yep.
And my reason is that I wasn't part of the board when that other permit was done, and I know we as a board are trying to be consistent, but be that as it may, with this particular applicant, I mean, I've had history, and you have too, at the planning board level, and I think that this is just a way of the applicant trying to skirt around having to go to the planning board to get an amended site plan. And I think that that's not the right way to do it, and so, just so you know.
And listen, part of it, you know, I think we've all stated that he should be considering going back to the planning board for an amended site plan review.
Right, but as long as we continue doing this, he has no reason to go back to the planning board.
But that's a good point. So for the other establishment as well, next year comes along and it's outdoor music season again, are we gonna deny it and say, no, go get a new site plan, or are we gonna?
And I believe we explained to them as well that we felt the same way, that we would approve it for this year for them to work through it, and that they should be, if this is something they decide that is successful for them and they wanna continue it, that they should be pursuing an amended site plan.
Right, they're all set for this summer. Come the fall, they should put in a request to meet with the planning board and get it on their plan, then they don't have to come back to the board.
But if they don't, and they come back next year for more,
Then we have to make a decision.
right?
Then it's decision time.
Right, but I'm not gonna worry about that now.
Yeah.
And maybe at the end of the season, we review any of these ones and we send them a letter saying, hey, we're happy that this seems to be successful for you. Please be reminded that it's the board's opinion that we wanted to give you the opportunity to work through this, but you should be, if you're gonna continue this next year, so that they can't say, oh, we forgot about that.
Right.
So maybe we can pursue that, but we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Opposed. Carries 4-1. All right. Let's see. There was nothing really of issue in any of the purchase orders. All the lines seem to be consistent with all that and all the, any of the other.
There weren't that many purchase orders this time around anyway, except for the fire department.
All right, we're looking for the approval of the meeting minutes for June 5th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Those were just for public, right?
Just public.
There was no non-public.
Correct. So we do have at least one non-public for 90, and we'd be looking to move into non-public pursuant to RSA 91A3, paragraph, Roman numeral 2. And
I think that would
is
be
that
A.
Is that A or F?
I think it's A.
Yeah, we just need to cite it.
Yeah. One is higher, I think B is hiring,
Yes.
so you'd be talking A.
Yeah, so A, because we have an employee evaluation for a department head. So I would take a motion on that.
So moved. Second. Pick one.
Roll call vote, Ellie?
Yes.
Glenn? Yes. I'm a yes.
Yes.
All right. All right, we are moving into non-public. Thank you for coming. I mean, we're gonna come out